I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell this story publicly, but here we are. My name is David, I'm 34, and I work as a software engineer in Portland. Up until 8 months ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And it cost me $23,000 to find out just how wrong I was. Let me start from the beginning, because this story, it's going to sound unbelievable. Hell, I still can't believe it happened to me. I met Sarah when we were both 28. She was this bubbly, energetic woman who worked in marketing for a local startup. We clicked immediately. She had this way of making everything seem brighter, more exciting. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, and had what I thought was a beautiful wedding 3 years ago. Looking back now, I should have paid more attention to the red flags. But you know how it is when you're in love. You see what you want to see. The first red flag should have been her family. Don't get me wrong, I believe in supporting family, but Sarah's relationship with her sister Emma was intense. Emma was 26, 2 years younger than Sarah, and she had this entitled attitude that rubbed me the wrong way from day one. She expected everyone to drop everything for her, and somehow, they always did. Especially Sarah. Emma had been engaged to this guy Marcus for about a year when this whole mess started. Marcus seemed decent enough, worked in finance, had his life together, treated Emma well despite her demanding personality. But Emma? She wanted a wedding that would rival a royal ceremony. We're talking a $40,000 budget for 200 guests, designer dress, destination bachelorette party, the works. Here's the thing, though. Emma worked part-time as a yoga instructor, and Marcus, while he had a good job, wasn't exactly rolling in cash. They had maybe saved up $15,000 for the wedding, which left them way short of Emma's dream celebration. That's where my nightmare began. It was a Tuesday evening in March when Sarah brought it up. I remember because I was working on a particularly frustrating coding project, and she came into my home office with that look. You know the look, the one that says, "I'm about to ask you for something big, and I really hope you'll say yes." "Honey," she said, perching on the edge of my desk, "I need to talk to you about something important." I saved my work and turned to face her. "What's up?" "It's about Emma's wedding." She paused, fidgeting with her engagement ring. "They're having some financial difficulties, and I was wondering if we could help them out. Now, let me be clear about our financial situation. I made good money as a senior software engineer, about $95,000 a year. Sarah made around $55,000 in her marketing role. We had a comfortable life, a nice savings account, and we'd been talking about buying a house and starting a family. We weren't rich, but we were stable and responsible with our money." "How much help are we talking about?" I asked. Sarah looked down at her hands. "Well, they're about $25,000 short of what they need." I nearly choked. $25,000? Sarah, that's a huge amount of money. That's like half our savings. "I know it sounds like a lot," she said quickly. "But Emma is my only sister. This is her dream wedding, and she's been planning it since we were kids. I can't let her settle for something less than perfect because of money." I took a deep breath. "Okay, let's think about this practically. Could we maybe contribute $5,000? That would still be a significant help, and we could afford it without destroying our financial goals." The look on Sarah's face told me that wasn't going to be enough. "David, please. I know it's a big ask, but family comes first, right? We can rebuild our savings. Emma can't have another first wedding." That should have been red flag number 2 right there. The way she dismissed our financial goals, our future plans, like they were nothing compared to Emma's party. But I loved my wife, and I wanted her to be happy. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course," she said, kissing my forehead. "Just don't take too long. They need to put deposits down soon." Over the next few days, Sarah brought it up constantly. She'd show me photos from Emma's Pinterest boards, talk about how devastated Emma was about potentially having to downgrade her dream wedding, mention how other family members were doing their part to help. The pressure was relentless, but it was subtle. Death by 1,000 cuts. Finally, I caved. Not completely. I agreed to lend them $15,000, not gift it. I made it very clear to both Sarah and Emma that this was a loan, to be paid back over 2 years at 0 interest. I thought I was being generous while still protecting our financial future. Emma cried when we told her. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe and kept saying, "Thank you, you're the best brother-in-law ever. I promise we'll pay you back as soon as possible." Sarah was over the moon. She spent the next week planning engagement party contributions, offering to help with decorations, volunteering to be Emma's wedding coordinator. She was so happy that I felt good about the decision. I thought I was being a good husband and a good brother-in-law. The wedding was planned for August, about 5 months away. Almost immediately, the spending seemed to escalate beyond what we'd discussed. Sarah would come home talking about the new photographer Emma had booked, or the upgraded venue she'd chosen, or the additional flowers she absolutely had to have. Every time I expressed concern about the increasing costs, Sarah would remind me that Emma was using our money wisely and that everything would work out. But here's where things started getting weird. In June, about 2 months before the wedding, I started noticing some unusual activity on our joint credit card. Small charges at first, $200 here, $350 there, always to vendors I didn't recognize. When I asked Sarah about them, she'd brush it off. "Oh, that's probably Emma putting some last-minute stuff on our card. I told her she could use it for small things since we're helping with the wedding anyway." That didn't sit right with me, but Sarah made it sound so reasonable. "She's going to pay us back for everything, right? Even the credit card charges?" "Of course," Sarah said. "God, David, why are you being so paranoid about money lately? It's like you don't trust my family." There it was, the manipulation tactic. Make me the bad guy for being concerned about our finances. Make me feel guilty for questioning her judgment. It worked, unfortunately. I backed down and tried to trust that everything would work out. The credit card charges continued, though. By mid-July, there was almost $8,000 in wedding-related expenses on our card. When I brought it up again, Sarah got defensive. "These are all necessary expenses, David. Emma's keeping track of everything. You're going to get every penny back after the wedding." "But we agreed on $15,000, I said. "We're already at $23,000 with the credit card charges. This is way beyond what we discussed." "It's temporary," Sarah insisted. "Emma's parents are contributing money after the wedding, and she and Marcus are getting cash gifts that will cover everything. You need to stop being so controlling about money." Controlling. That word hit me like a slap. I'd never been controlling about money in our relationship. If anything, I was probably too generous, too trusting, but Sarah made me feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting to stick to our agreement. The wedding itself was beautiful, I'll give Emma that. It was held at this gorgeous vineyard outside the city, with stunning decorations, amazing food, and a live band that probably cost more than some people's cars. Emma looked radiant, Marcus seemed happy, and all the guests were impressed by the lavish celebration. Sarah was in her element, playing the role of the supportive sister. She gave a tearful maid of honor speech about how much Emma meant to her and how she'd do anything to make her sister's dreams come true. Everyone applauded, and I felt proud of my wife's generosity and love for her family. But as I watched Emma dancing in her $3,000 designer dress, surrounded by $500 centerpieces and eating from a dessert table that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage, an uncomfortable feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a display of wealth that we had largely funded, and I started wondering if we'd ever actually see that money again. The first red flag post-wedding came about 3 weeks later. I gently brought up the repayment plan with Sarah, just to get a timeline on when we might start seeing some money back. "Oh, Emma and Marcus are still dealing with all the gift checks and getting settled into married life," Sarah said dismissively. "Give them some time to breathe before you start hounding them for money." Hounding them? I wasn't hounding anyone. I was asking about a legitimate loan repayment that we'd all agreed to. Another month passed, then another. Every time I brought up the money, Sarah had a new excuse. Emma and Marcus were dealing with wedding stress. They were having our troubles. Marcus had some unexpected work expenses. Emma was thinking about changing jobs. By November, 3 months after the wedding, I was getting genuinely worried about our finances. We'd put off house hunting because our savings were depleted. We'd had to use credit cards for a few unexpected expenses because we didn't have our usual cash buffer. The dream wedding was starting to feel like a nightmare for our financial future. That's when I decided to have a direct conversation with Emma and Marcus. I figured maybe they didn't realize how much the delayed repayment was affecting us, and we could work out a realistic payment plan. I called Emma on a Saturday morning. "Hey Emma, how are you settling into married life?" "Oh, David, hi, we're doing great. Marcus and I just got back from our mini-moon in Napa. It was incredible." A mini-moon. They were taking more trips while owing us $23,000. That sounds wonderful, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Listen, I wanted to touch base about the wedding loan repayment. It's been a few months and Sarah and I are starting to plan our budget for next year. Could we maybe set up a payment schedule? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Oh, Emma said finally. About that, I think there might be some confusion. Confusion? Well, Sarah told us that the money was a wedding gift, not a loan. We weren't expecting to pay it back. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I'm sorry, what? No, Emma, we very clearly discussed this as a loan. I specifically said it was a loan when we agreed to help. That's not what Sarah told us, Emma said, sounding genuinely surprised. She said you guys wanted to give us the money as a wedding present. We never would have accepted that much money if we thought it was a loan. My hands were shaking. Emma, I need to be very clear about this. When we agreed to help, I explicitly said it was a $15,000 loan to be paid back over 2 years, and that was before the additional $8,000 in credit card charges. Credit card charges? Now Emma sounded confused and a little panicked. David, I don't know anything about credit card charges. Sarah handled all the financial coordination. She told us you guys were covering everything as your gift to us. I ended the call as politely as I could and immediately went to find Sarah. She was in the living room, watching Netflix and looking completely relaxed. My world was crashing down, and she was binge-watching The Office. Sarah, I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. I just spoke with Emma. She looked up from the TV, and I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? Oh, how is she doing? She thinks the wedding money was a gift. She has no idea it was supposed to be a loan. Sarah's face went pale. David, I can explain. Explain what? I was trying so hard not to yell. Explain how you lied to me about the repayment terms. Explain how you've been putting charges on our credit card without telling me the full extent. Explain how you've been letting your sister believe they got a $23,000 wedding gift while I've been stressing about our finances for months. She started crying. Not the gentle tears of someone who made a mistake, the desperate tears of someone who got caught in a massive deception. I was going to figure it out, she sobbed. I thought maybe my parents would help, or maybe we could just absorb the cost. I didn't want Emma to have a smaller wedding because of money. You lied to me, Sarah. You manipulated me into giving your sister $23,000 by pretending it was a loan when you knew it was really a gift. I didn't manipulate you, she said defensively. I knew you wouldn't agree to gift that much money, so I thought if I framed it as a loan initially, you'd see how important it was to help family, and eventually you'd be okay with not getting it back. The casual way she admitted to deceiving me was breathtaking. She had calculated this manipulation from the beginning. She had never intended for Emma to pay us back. She had tricked me into funding her sister's dream wedding by lying about the most fundamental aspect of the arrangement. Do you have any idea what you've done to our finances? I asked. We were supposed to buy a house this year. We were supposed to start trying for kids. We had plans, Sarah. We had goals. And you threw all of that away so your sister could have a fancy party. It's not just a party, Sarah snapped, her tears suddenly stopping. It's the most important day of her life. And yes, I prioritized my sister's happiness over your obsession with money. My obsession with money. Our shared financial goals had become my obsession. Our future had become secondary to her sister's party. That night, I slept in the guest bedroom. I spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. My wife had orchestrated an elaborate deception to steal $23,000 from our savings for her sister's wedding. And when confronted, she didn't apologize or show remorse. She doubled down and made me the villain for caring about our financial security. The next morning, I made some calls. First, I called a lawyer, then I called my accountant. By the end of the day, I had a clear picture of my options, and none of them were good. The lawyer explained that since Sarah was my wife and we had joint accounts, there probably wasn't a clear case of theft, but there might be grounds for financial fraud or breach of fiduciary duty. The accountant helped me document exactly how much money had been spent and where it had gone. For the next few weeks, Sarah tried to act like everything was normal. She'd make my coffee in the morning, ask about my workday, suggest movies for us to watch together. But I was done. The trust was completely broken. Every interaction felt fake, like she was performing the role of loving wife while knowing she'd betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. I started sleeping in the guest room permanently. I opened my own checking account and started direct depositing my paycheck there instead of our joint account. I made it clear to Sarah that our marriage was in serious trouble, and she needed to figure out how to make this right. Her solution? She wanted me to go to couples counseling so we could work through my trust issues. My trust issues. As if the problem was my reaction to her deception, not the deception itself. That's when I knew our marriage was over. Not because of the money, honestly, but because of how she handled getting caught. She showed no remorse, took no responsibility, and continued to manipulate and gaslight me even after the truth came out. In January, I filed for divorce. Sarah was shocked, which surprised me. Did she really think I'd just get over being financially manipulated and lied to for months? "You're divorcing me over money?" she cried when I served her the papers. "I'm divorcing you because you're a liar," I replied. "The money is just evidence of how far you'll go to deceive me." But here's where the story gets interesting. Because while I was filing for divorce, I was also building a case to get my money back. Remember how Emma said she had no idea about the credit card charges? That turned out to be key. With my lawyer's help, we subpoenaed the credit card records and cross-referenced them with Emma and Marcus's wedding vendor payments. It turned out that Sarah had been using our credit card to pay for wedding expenses too. Had Emma and Marcus thought were being covered by other family members. In other words, Sarah had been running a mini Ponzi scheme with wedding expenses. She'd tell me the charges were for things Emma was going to pay back. She'd tell Emma that other relatives were covering those costs. Meanwhile, we were paying for everything. Emma wasn't tracking most of the expenses, and Sarah was pocketing the difference in everyone's expectations. When Emma and Marcus learned the full extent of what Sarah had done, how she'd manipulated both them and me, how she'd lied to everyone to orchestrate the elaborate deception, they were horrified. They immediately offered to pay back what they could, though they admitted they'd spent most of their wedding gift money and couldn't afford to repay the full amount quickly. But the really beautiful part of this story happened when we went to court for the divorce proceedings. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that since we were married and had joint finances, the wedding expenses were a legitimate use of marital funds. Basically, they were claiming that because Sarah had access to our joint accounts, she had the right to spend that money however she wanted, even if she lied to me about it. My lawyer was ready for this argument. He'd helped me document not just the financial fraud, but the pattern of deception. We had records of my conversations with Emma where I specifically stated the money was a loan. We had evidence that Sarah had told Emma it was a gift. We had credit card statements showing charges that Sarah had hidden from both me and Emma. Most importantly, we had proof that Sarah's deception had continued for months after the wedding, with her creating elaborate stories about why the money wasn't being repaid, all while knowing that repayment was never part of her plan. The judge was not impressed with Sarah's defense. In fact, he said something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. "Mrs. Johnson, marriage is a partnership that requires honesty and mutual respect. You cannot claim the benefits of joint property while completely abandoning the responsibilities of joint decision-making. You orchestrated a deliberate deception that lasted for months and cost your husband thousands of dollars. This court does not consider that a legitimate use of marital funds." The final divorce decree included a provision requiring Sarah to pay me back the full $23,000, plus interest, plus my legal fees. Since she didn't have that much money readily available, the judge ordered that her portion of our other shared assets would be adjusted to account for the debt. Essentially, Sarah's dream of giving her sister a fairy tale wedding ended up costing her most of her share of our home equity, her car, and half of her retirement savings. But the story doesn't end there. Emma and Marcus ended up getting divorced about a year later. Turns out that the financial stress of owing family members money, combined with the revelation of Sarah's manipulation, put a huge strain on their marriage. Emma blamed Marcus for not tracking the wedding expenses more carefully. Marcus blamed Emma for accepting money from family without understanding the terms. They both blamed Sarah for creating the whole mess. The fairy tale wedding that cost me $23,000, and my marriage lasted exactly 14 months. Sarah tried to contact me a few times after the divorce was final. She wanted to explain her side of the story and make me understand why she did what she did. I never responded. There was nothing left to understand. She'd shown me exactly who she was, and I believed her. As for me, I'm doing well. Really well, actually. I bargain. A smaller house with my share of the divorce assets, and I love it. It's just the right size for me, with a great home office and a beautiful backyard. I've been dating someone new for about 6 months, someone who believes in honesty and communication, imagine that. I've also learned some valuable lessons from this whole experience. First, trust your instincts. Every time I felt uncomfortable about the wedding spending, I was right to feel that way. Second, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Sarah's willingness to manipulate me over money was never going to be a one-time thing. And finally, I learned that sometimes the most expensive lesson is the most valuable one. $23,000 was a lot of money to lose, but it was cheap compared to spending the rest of my life with someone who would lie to my face for months and then blame me for being upset about it. These days, when people ask me about the divorce, I keep it simple. We had fundamental differences about honesty and financial responsibility. I don't usually tell the whole story because, frankly, most people wouldn't believe it. But every once in a while, when someone is dealing with family pressure about money or questioning whether their partner is being truthful about finances, I share the details. Because I think it's important for people to know that financial manipulation in marriage is real, it's devastating, and it's absolutely grounds for walking away. The funny thing is, I'm actually grateful to Sarah now. Not for what she did, but for showing me her true character before we bought a house together or had kids. Imagine if this had happened when we had children and a mortgage and 20 years of shared history. The betrayal would have been so much more complicated and costly. Instead, I got to learn who she really was and make a clean break while I was still young enough to rebuild my life completely. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret not trying harder to save the marriage, maybe through counseling or giving Sarah a second chance. The answer is absolutely not. Because the issue was never really about the money. The issue was that when caught in a massive deception, Sarah's instinct wasn't to apologize and make things right. It was to gaslight me, blame me, and try to make me believe that my reaction was the problem. That told me everything I needed to know about what the rest of our marriage would have looked like. So here I am, 2 years later, financially recovered, emotionally healthy, and in a relationship with someone who would never dream of lying to me about money or manipulating me into funding her family's extravagant lifestyle. And Sarah? Last I heard, she's working 2 jobs to pay off the debt from the divorce decree and living in a studio apartment across town. Emma and Marcus both cut contact with her after their own divorce, blaming her manipulation for the financial stress that contributed to the end of their marriage. The elaborate wedding that was supposed to be the perfect celebration of family love and support ended up destroying 2 marriages and multiple family relationships. All because Sarah thought her sister's party was more important than her husband's trust. Sometimes I drive past that vineyard where Emma's wedding was held, and I think about that night. How beautiful everything looked. How happy everyone seemed. How proud I felt watching Sarah give her speech about doing anything for family. I had no idea I was watching my wife perform the greatest lie of her life in front of 200 witnesses. But you know what? I got the last laugh. Because while Sarah spent months planning her deception and thinking she was so clever for manipulating me, she never considered that her lies might have legal consequences. She was so focused on her short-term goal of funding her sister's dream wedding that she never thought about what would happen when the truth came out. And when it did come out, the legal system was there to make sure I didn't pay the price for her dishonesty. Justice isn't always swift, and it isn't always perfect. But sometimes, if you document everything and stand up for yourself, the truth really does win in the end. And that, my friends, is worth more than $23,000 any day.